All right, Pastor, you are on. All right.
Okay, folks. We have our first focus this morning is going to be a difficult subject for all of us. It's self-control. Okay. When we think about Proverbs, there's a lot of Proverbs that encourage self-control. Now, if you think about Proverbs as kind of an extension or delving into the different commandments of the 10 Commandments, sort of applying them in various practical ways, when you think about self-control, you wonder which of the commandments is this most addressing. And that's the thing with self-control. It might be addressing a number of different ones. We'll start with this one. You shall not covet. Now, you say, what does self-control have to do with coveting? Well, everything. Remember, the commandment regarding covet is the one commandment that deals with your inner motives, your inner self. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. It has to do with your disposition within. And self-control has everything to do with your disposition within. Can you stay within yourself? When you don't stay within yourself, all kinds of commandments can be implicated. So, for example, the 8th commandment can be implicated when you say things that are hurtful to other people, for example, and you can't control yourself. The 5th commandment can be implicated when you actually strike out and physically hurt somebody else because you can't control yourself. We could say that the 4th commandment is implicated because you just bow up every time anybody wants to exercise any control or authority, however right that control and authority might be. So you can see that, and of course sexually, a lack of self-control leads to all kinds of problems. One thing that having a spouse and family teaches you is that you either exercise self-control, not only you, but everybody around you pays a terrible price. So anyway, self-control is something that is important, and so we'll take a look at some Proverbs here and see what they say about it. Some of these are a little bit humorous. We're all going to recognize people and recognize ourselves, okay, because there are times when, we just don't keep a lid on it like we ought to. So we'll talk about self-control, and when we're done with that, there's a little section that I have titled Dealing with Fools. Or maybe I called it The Danger of Fools. That's right, it's the danger of fools. Why fools are dangerous. And so there's a whole section in Proverbs that talks about the danger that happens when you're around a fool and what fools do. And then a little bit on dealing with fools. Okay. Now, the vexation of a fool is known at once. Yes?
The definition of fool. Earlier you described the fool as one who is not in the word, not wise. And then you had the
okay, so that's a good start. Okay, number one, a fool is defined less by what they do and think, by what they don't believe. Okay, so a fool is somebody who rejects the wisdom that God has delivered in the Scriptures. You might be, okay, so that's number one. You're a fool if you reject God's wisdom, regardless of how you behave. And the second thing is, we're going to see all kinds of examples of fools, things that fools do. But I don't want you to get the impression that there's anybody who does all of these things. That would be, who could live like that? So this is not saying that if you are a fool, you do all these different things. What it's saying is, all these different things are foolish. Okay? These are the kinds of things that only a fool would do. But nobody does all of them. One kind of thing that is foolish is letting your vexation be known all at once. You get frustrated. You get frustrated with another person. You get frustrated with something you're trying to do. And right away, you blow your stack. Everybody knows when you're agitated. Everybody knows when you're upset because you do not suffer in silence ever, okay? There are times when all of us will sort of overflow with our emotions and our exasperation and so on. But some people, it's instantaneous. You always know when they're upset. These, of course, are not fun people to be around. Okay? I'm going to pick on my brother, not the brother you see here, but my brother who passed away many years ago. I shouldn't be using him as this example, but it was so extreme. We would go golfing. And my brother, let's say, did not have a bad shot that you didn't know it. You didn't know it fully and completely and abundantly. And he would so rage all. Now, the thing is, we've all, I would have a bad shot now and again, and sometimes it would really make me angry. The problem with Kevin is that he wasn't very good, okay? And so he had a lot of bad shots, and every single one of them, and it was just really something. To play a few holes with him was to experience a whirlwind of emotions, and it just wasn't very fun. All right, but the prudent ignores an insult. The fool doesn't. It's not to say that if you're a fool, you'll never ignore an insult. What it means is, if you won't ignore an insult and let your vexation be known at once, you're being a fool. Okay? Whereas, if you ignore an insult, you're being prudent. You're thinking through. What does prudence mean, by the way?
Temperate?
Well, it's related to that. To be prudent means to think through the consequences of what you're doing. Okay, so if I do this, then this is liable to happen. Okay, so a prudent person thinks through the next step. A prudent person ignores an insult because if you insult me and then I insult you back, what might happen? Well, all kinds of bad things. But if you keep your mouth shut, you might forestall a lot of potential problems. Okay, a fool gives full vent to his spirit. That's similar to his vexation is known at once. So you get that theme here. The fool has got to let the whole world know how they feel. And it is not always important that everybody know how I feel. A part of good manners is a kind of dishonesty, if you really want to think about it. It's not a mean dishonesty. It's not meant to hurt anybody. Actually, it's meant to help. I'm having a really bad day, and I'm very irritated even at the sight of you. But I'm not going to let you know. Am I being honest? I guess not. I could tell you, the one person I didn't want to see this morning is you, and here you are. Okay?
When your wife asks you, how was the meal, honey?
Yeah, well, and that's a delicate dance, isn't it? How it was actually for me. I will say this. I am a lot easier to cook for than my wife. I can cook for her, and she'll be brutally honest, but she's also much more selective in what she likes. She's cooked for me for many years. One meal. She knows what it is. One meal I did not like, and I told her I did not like. She didn't like it either. Neither one of us. But there was not another meal that she ever cooked that I couldn't say that was wonderful. Even if she said, this is terrible. How could you eat that garbage? I didn't know. I thought it was good garbage today. Whatever. Okay. When we give full vent to ourselves, number one is we make ourselves the center of the universe. It's like how I feel is the most important thing in the world, and that you know how I feel is the most important thing in the world. We're not being very prudent when we do that, because if I act all upset, what's going to happen to the people around me? They're going to get upset. We're all going to be upset, and the world is just not as happy of a place. Now, there are times when you have to speak up, but the prudent person is aware and does the cost-benefit analysis. Okay, there's no upside to me speaking up here, and there's lots of downsides. I'm going to be quiet if I have self-control. If I don't have self-control, I'm not going to go through that thought process, and I'm going to vent because that's how I feel. Okay, manners are a way that all of us learn. Well, one of the things that manners teaches us is to suppress the particular feelings that you may have in the moment and the particular thing that may be on your mind, not because it values dishonesty, but because it values treating one another's feelings with regard, okay? The fool doesn't do that because the fool's not thinking about the other person. The fool is only thinking about themselves and how they feel. The wise man quietly holds back. Okay? You do not say the first thing that comes to your mind. You do not say it as soon as it comes to you. You are circumspect, careful. Not necessarily because you're afraid, but just because you realize that once you say a thing, it can't be unsaid. Okay? So count to 10, metaphorically, all right? And sometimes it's, well, all right, we've all, here's something you probably all experienced. It's the email that you crafted and then decided not to send until you've thought about it some. Now, after you've thought about it some, how often do you go ahead and send the email anyway? You often don't. Or at least you'll go back and make a few other, all right? But when you fire off the email right away, I mean, there's a good chance that there's things in there that if you'd have thought about that, you'd have taken that back. Well, okay, that's an email, but the problem with emails is that they happen so fast. Well, what you say with your mouth happens even faster.
But there's no record of it.
Yeah, there's no record of it. Unfortunately, there is a record. It's a record of the person you spoke to and the people right around you. At any rate, this is an issue of self-control, is staying within ourselves for the benefit of people around us. All right? I will also say this. It's to our benefit, too. So, in other words, if I vent and vent and vent and vent, the people around me don't like that much. But it's not like it's helping me. There are some people, or some times, let's put it that way, there are some times when I got to get something off my chest. And once I get it off my chest, how do I feel? Better. But sometimes it doesn't work that way at all. Sometimes I get it off my chest, and what happens? It's not off my chest. In other words, I'm scratching an itch, but it isn't helping any. I'm actually it's getting worse and worse. I'm getting myself all worked into a lather. Self-control. A stone is heavy and sound is weighty, but a fool's provocation is heavier than both. All right, so this goes the other way. So here, the fool is spouting and carrying on and doing whatever they do, and they may not be acting in a vexatious way. They may just be doing things that you recognize is wrong and bad. And it's a provocation. It provokes you. It's enticing and calling you to react. Should you react? We'll see that sometimes you should and sometimes you shouldn't. But no matter whether you should or shouldn't, it is a provocation. It's like being punched in the nose. It cries out for a response. Being insulted cries out for a response. Responding may not be a good thing, but nevertheless. So the fool doesn't hold back and lets you know exactly how he feels at all moments. Fools also put us in a position where we are tempted to do the same thing, okay? Whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. Now, that's getting at a very important truth.
Self-control.
Self-control, well, the lack of self-control will undermine almost every other attribute you may have. And having, if you can, let's put it this way, if you can master yourself, then there's no limit to what you can accomplish. That's an exaggeration, but if you can rule your own spirit, then you are counted among those who can capture a city, okay? It's an exaggeration. They're two different things, but it's making the point that if you can't control yourself, you really can't do anything else. in controlling yourself is not necessarily easy. Are all of you feeling very self-controlled now? Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. Slow to anger, patient. It's easy to be patient if you don't care. Harder to be patient when you do. So this doesn't say don't care. It says be slow to anger. And the opposite of slow to anger is quick temper. A man without self-control. Now this is the opposite. If you have self-control, you can take a city. Look at the second one here, 25:28. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. What does that mean? So, when I was little, I would sometimes be accused of pressing my little brother's buttons. What does that mean?
Agitating, provoking.
Right, but yes, provoking him, but provoking him in a way that I am uniquely capable of doing, because why? I know precisely what to say. The tiniest thing, the tiniest little thing. I can do it. Nobody else will even notice. But he has buttons. We all have buttons. Some of our buttons are big. There are lots of them. We touch the button, and you touch it again. You touch it again every single time. Touch it 1,000 times, you get the same reaction every single time. That person is a sitting duck. That they're easy to defeat once the person realizes your buttons. Once they know, you're done. Because you have no self-control. And all I have to do is insult your mother. And if I insult your mother, you'll just go crazy. You don't have the capacity to say, he doesn't know my mother. He's an idiot. So I'm just going to be quiet. You don't have that self-control. I've just insulted your mother, and therefore, the rest is history. Okay? And I just watch you blow up. So that's why it says, a person without self-control, or self-control, is our strength to take a city. Our self-control is also our defense against what others can do to us. If you have no self-control, you have no strength to take the city, and you have no strength to defend yourself. Okay? You're just waiting for the next provocation. If a wise man has an argument with a fool, the fool only rages and laughs, and there is no quiet. Have you ever had an argument with a fool? We surely have. That's right. I refuse to have a battle of wits with an unarmed person, right? There are people that it's a waste of time, because you can try to explain things quietly. You can try to be reasonable. It doesn't matter. This is the don't confuse me with facts, my mind is made up kind of thing. This is a person who's just so involved in themselves that it doesn't really matter what you say or what you do. You're wasting your time. This is the never try to teach a pig to sing type of a thing. And there are some people, or at least I think it's safe to say there are some people that are almost always this way, and then lots of people are sometimes this way. I mean, there are times, I guess we'd be bold to say, all of us can be this way. Think about an argument with your spouse. These are some of the silliest arguments you'll ever get in, if you ever could have a transcript of it and somebody else could read it. And they would look at that and they'd say, what? Two very, very foolish people. You never knew they were foolish. You've known these people all your life. They seem absolutely temperate and wonderful people. You read this, and that's because in this context, we sometimes are absolutely intransigent. I will not listen to you, because this is not an argument. This is a battle of what? Of will. Okay? So I don't care whether you're right or wrong. I'm not going to let you win. Will I ever say that? I won't say that. I won't even say that to myself. Maybe I will say that to myself later if I can have that kind of self-honesty and introspection. I might later on say, that was a battle of wills, and I refused to lose, and that's why I refused to listen, and that's why I said the things I said, however stupid they are. If you ever find yourself in an argument making a response that even while you're making it, you know is embarrassing and ridiculous, you know you have gone off the deep end here, and there's a problem like this. You're raging and laughing, and there is no quiet, because it's not about the thing. It is really true. Most arguments, especially in a domestic setting, is very rarely about the substance that you're arguing about. Just very rarely. That's just the thing that triggers it, okay? What you almost always have is a whole raft of other issues, personality issues, fears, threats, old things that had been said, old things, hurts that have not been resolved, and they all rush to the forefront the moment there is a single argument over the toothpaste or something like that. And nobody cares, and nobody even remembers what it is that we're arguing about anymore, because the whole thing is a powder keg. It's raging and laughing. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Folks, this stuff is 3,000 years old. Okay? But it's no different. There are people who obviously do not care what you say. They only care that you listen to what they say. Yeah, the teenager, that's right. That's right. The Bible for a teenager, all it is Proverbs. That's read this, study it, think about it. But no, when you think about these things being 3,000 years old and in a very different culture, but we recognize all of this as things that people do. And of course, we joke about teenagers, but that's the very reason why teenagers are that way, is because they're completely self-involved. And that's what's going on here. They are, when you're totally self-involved, you also become blind. You don't see what you look like. You don't see how one-sided all of this is. You just think that you're right all the time. You think that you see clearly and nobody else does. This is very humorous with teenagers who think that they see things that nobody else in all the world and all the history of the earth has never seen before, and they've stumbled upon it, and here they are 13. But poor old mom and dad have no idea. The man of quick temper acts foolishly, and the man of evil devices is hated. So there's a difference between evil devices and a quick temper. Both of them end in disaster, but for very different reasons. So the man of quick temper is different than the man of evil devices in that it's a matter of lack of self-control, not a desire necessarily to hurt. Some people hurt everybody around them, even though they don't mean to and don't want to. Or they don't mean to or want to nearly as much as they actually do. It's just their way of carrying themselves is painful. Now that's different than the person who is truly wicked, who doesn't care if they hurt the people around them. They want what they want. As a public defender, most of my clients were of the first sort. They just don't control themselves. They have drug problems, they have personality problems, they have all kinds of history and baggage in their past, and they just hurt everybody around them. Usually just wanting to get high or do something that, there's no, they're not meaning to hurt anybody. That's what they would say, and it's kind of true. Most of my clients were like that. But there were some that would sit on the other side of my desk that I wouldn't turn my back on. This is not just somebody who lacks self-control. This is somebody who is wicked. They are a person who will gladly do evil if it gets them what they want. Those were the exceptions. Those were the ones when they went to jail or prison, I didn't care. Okay? The other ones I felt sorry for, because I realized what they need is not a bash on the head. Well, yes, they do, but they need to learn from that bash on the head, because these are human beings and they can make something of themselves, but not if they keep living like this. The person of evil devices is a dead man walking, okay? And they're dangerous. Okay, answer a fool according to, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. Here again, we go back to as a child, you know. And just because somebody insults you doesn't mean you have to insult them back. It's that simple. And just because somebody acts outrageously with you does not mean you need to lower yourself to their level. This is what we're always told, you know, on the playground. Don't lower yourself to their level. They're just jealous or whatnot like that. I don't know whether it works or not. I don't know whether that's true or not. But nevertheless, this is true. There is a time when you respond in kind, however much, and see, this is the thing. It feels so just. So, you call my mother this, I call your mother that, okay? And it's just fair. But you're just as foolish as they are. Remember the provocation of a fool. Okay? Weightier than sand, okay? One who is wise is cautious and turns away from evil, but the fool is reckless and careless. He rushes in where angels fear to tread, okay? Because he's just not thinking about anything. No prudence, no temperance, no self-control, no nothing. And oftentimes the way he rushes in is with his mouth. We get in there's a lot of proverbs that talk about this, where the things that we say bring about many blows, okay? And it's our own fault because of our big mouths, all right? Okay, any thoughts on self-control?
Were there any mentions of Facebook in this?
There should be. Well, there's actually, since you mentioned Facebook, it is very interesting to see how people behave when they think that they can get away with it. And that's one of the big problems with Facebook is you are mostly anonymous. You might be literally anonymous. Nobody has any idea who you are. But even if it's your name, it may be that the millions of people who might read or you imagine reading, none of them are going to know you. None of them are going to have a personal relationship with you at all. And so you say things you would never say if face to face. Because there are consequences for that. And even fools, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, how you deal with fools. Proverbs has some ideas. Yes?
A fellow comes to mind that I'd worked with way back when, and I'm trying to figure out if he would fit in the category. You know, I said, I don't think he would fit in the category as a fool, but he was a engineer, worked for the Navy, a project engineer for all kinds of stuff. He knew everything there was to know about designing jet drives, and I hired him as a consultant. That's where I learned all of my stuff. He gave me formulas that I've never seen in a book anyplace on how to design. He was just a genius. But I considered him as being extra gruff.
Yeah.
And just one thing that came to mind is he flew in from Oregon one afternoon. We had a little meeting, and then the next morning, I knew better, but I asked him, "How was your evening?" And he could say, "All right, boring, whatever." No. His true to character was, "It's none of your business." you know, he wasn't mean or anything, he just, you're doing your business, guy. You know, that's just, and nobody really wanted to have a conversation with him because he was so blunt that he
Yep.
would just scare him to death. I could get along with him fine, but no one else could. But he's not really a fool. I don't know what he would consider him.
You know, and there are personality types that you mentioned there, for example, of people who he really doesn't mean to be rude. He's as rude as can be in terms of how that's going to come up. But he doesn't see that and never will see that. There are lots of people with, I mean, various people who are on what they call the spectrum, you know, whether you're autistic or Asperger's or something like that. Part of their problem is they don't have that understanding of social situational awareness. They don't see how they look, how they sound. They may have no filter. And no ability to recognize that nobody would answer that way, and if they do, I'm just going to upset the person I just said that to. But they don't mean it. That's very different than the person who does mean it. You do have to draw these distinctions. Some people are just kind of gruff. Tommy? But once you get to know them, you love them, they're wonderful people. But there are other people that they say something like that and you know they meant it. And because they hold you in no regard. And that's the thing that destroys relationships. When somebody is rude to you because they're having a bad day and they just didn't have a little self-control that moment is one thing. When somebody treats you like that because they have no regard for you, that's a totally different thing.
That is the point. I hadn't even considered that till you said that. That was early on in our relationship, and we haven't done anything except copy some of the stuff that he did. He gave us. Mm-hmm. He regarded us and my company as a redneck stuff in Little Rock that don't know what they're doing, and I'm trying to help them out. But several years later, when we had units out running and no one else had done, and some of the stuff that we added to what he had done, he had respect for us and didn't treat us that way, or treat me that way anymore. So that's true.
Well, and so you're dealing with somebody like that, and if you are wise and prudent, you are slow to respond and circumspect, right? You do not right away say, what do you mean it's none of my business? You want to step outside? That's not what you do, okay?
He's too big.
But if you are more cautious and you get to know the person, you might ultimately determine this person doesn't mean that like that. And actually, I like them, even though they have not a good way. I mean, there are people that are so good, but not everybody who is really good around other people are somebody you even want to know. And not everybody who's not very good socially are bad people. So it's good to take your time and think about it and let a person, you know, give them time rather than jumping to conclusions. Because it's a fool that's going to jump to conclusions, and a wise person takes it in and thinks about it for maybe a long time. There's also always a cost-benefit analysis. Maybe you decide the guy is really a horrible person, but there's nothing in it for you, and there's no way you can help the situation. So just be quiet, take it, and move on. Fools can be dangerous. And remember what a fool is. A fool is, I mean, they're at their most dangerous when they don't seem foolish. Okay? But a fool is one who rejects the wisdom of God. They may have their own wisdom. They may have their own ways of doing things. They may have their own successes, their own abilities, their own skills. When you think of the fool with the person with the cap on and the jester sort, you're not understanding what it's saying here. Okay? In Shakespeare, the jester, the fool, is often the smartest one in the room. Okay? So we don't want to think about the zany person when we think of fool. Many fools have degrees after their names, and they stand up in front of college students and they opine about great things. But they're fools, and they're dangerous. Many fools seem very erudite. Many fools are very powerful, and they run government bureaucracies. Some of them get elected to offices and for things like that. They may be very respectable in the conventional sense, but they are dangerous. They are dangerous because of what they don't believe, and because of what they do. All right, now we have a series. These are all one after the next. So if you were to read this, it's verse after verse after verse after verse, okay? So we'll just go through them a little bit and think. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the donkey, and a rod for the back of fools. This starts it, okay? We'll come back to that theme. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. We just read that. But then look at the next one. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Fools are out there, and they're dangerous. Don't respond to them. Well, you better respond to them. Well, sometimes you respond and sometimes you don't. Whoever sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. To drink violence means you're asking for it. In other words, you send a fool to do a task, to deliver a message or to act on your behalf, and you're asking for it. Like a lame man's legs, which hang useless, is a proverb in the mouth of fools. So this doesn't seem to follow from the last one, except what it's saying is, if you send a fool to do your bidding, you're asking for trouble, and don't try to teach them out of it. Don't think that any kind of wisdom is going to fix this. As they sometimes say, what is it? There's no fixing stupid or something like that. They can't help stupid, right? If you've got a real fool, you can try to talk them out of it, but it isn't going to work. And if you end up relying upon somebody like that, you're asking for trouble. You are asking for it. Like one who binds the stone in a sling is one who gives honor to a fool. You've armed a fool if you honor them. What do we mean by honor? Could mean we're patting him on the back, good boy. Could mean we gave him a promotion. Could mean we doubled his salary. Could mean we just elected him to office. To honor him is to give him responsibility. To honor somebody in society is to lift them up. When you lift up a fool, it's like arming him. He's bad enough the way he is. You put him in a position of responsibility, and he can hurt a lot of people. So this is warning. Like a thorn that goes up into the hand of a drunkard is a proverb in the mouth of fools. This is the same kind of pairing you had before. You're not going to be able to fix it by sitting down with this person and explaining to them how they're a fool and they need to be wise. It isn't going to work. A society that honors fools is asking for it to mix these proverbs. Okay? You put foolish people in charge, and you're going to reap the whirlwind. We're all going to pay for this. Remember, these are one after the next. Like an archer who wounds everyone is one who hires a passing fool or drunkard. Again, you're arming him, and you have no idea where that arrow is going to go. He's the loose cannon. Okay? Once it starts shooting, it goes in every direction. You can't direct it at the enemy. It's going to go wherever it goes. It might come right at you. You hire a fool, you're asking for it. You're going to hurt people, yourself and others. Fools are dangerous. They're not just things that we chuckle at. They're dangerous. Remember, the zany person who's funny is not dangerous. They might be dangerous. They might just be funny. They might be extremely insightful. Some of the most insightful people in our culture are comedians. Now, some of the biggest fools in our society are comedians because we let them say whatever they want. At least we used to. And that allows some very witty things to be said, guised as humor. But good humor always has what?
Truth.
An element of truth. If it doesn't have an element of truth, it's not humorous. At best, it's an insult. At worst, it's not even that. It just falls flat. So the thing is, though, you take somebody who doesn't know the truth and you give them authority, and you're asking for it. Okay? Which is why we are having so much problems, I think, in our universities. We have been honoring fools. These are intelligent fools. They're not zany, but they have rejected the truth of the Scripture, and they fashioned their own truths, which we might say, okay, well, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do that. But we're not going to put you in charge of anything. Yes, we are. We're putting them in charge of teaching the next generation. You are asking for it. An awful lot of our problems started in the universities where kids were taught, because they're just watching these professors and they are just enraptured because these guys are so intelligent, so well spoken, and written all these books. And yet, they are fools and they wreck the kids they teach. But that happened not just because they were fools. It happened because they were fools and we honored them. We gave them arrows. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. Not a very happy image there, but it tells you something, that there's some people that no matter how many times they make a mistake, they never learn. Do you see a man who is wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him. This is the end of our little, think about that. We've just been talking about how terrible fools are, how dangerous fools are, and what is the punchline? Worse than that is the person who is wise in his own eyes. Okay. And so we see again what a fool is, because that's kind of the ultimate fool, is you're wise in your own eyes. But somebody who at least recognizes that they're not wise. In other words, a fool that knows they're a fool, there's hope. But if you don't know you're a fool, it's like Jesus says, the eye is the lamp of the soul. If the eye is black, how black the blackness is. In other words, if even when you think you're seeing it's all wrong, then what hope is there? Okay, the danger of fools. We all want to go hire one? All right, let's talk about dealing with fools. We've got here a couple of minutes and we'll talk about this. Dealing with fools. I'm being a little humorous here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But then we'll talk about something a little bit more sensible. Strike a scoffer and the simple will learn prudence. Notice that. Strike a scoffer, and what does the scoffer learn? Nothing. Okay? So why strike a scoffer?
Teach a lesson to others.
The simple will learn. Remember, you have the scoffers and the simple. The scoffers are lost causes. The simple are on the fence yet. So sometimes the reason why you might strike a scoffer, metaphorically or actually, is not for their sake. We don't care about you. We can't teach you anything. It's this kid over here. So what happens in our society when people get away with murder and everybody sees it? It is good that evil be punished, and bad when evil goes free. It's bad when righteousness is punished and good when it's rewarded. Not only for the people concerned, but for everybody else. So you might think that this person is a lost cause, there's no point in dealing with them, and you might be right. On the other hand, it may not be them that most needs the beating. They're going to get it, but it's others that need to see it. This is why in our school, we very cleverly hired a kid. First day of class, we hired a kid. And he got a little out of line on the second day of class, and in front of all the children, we beat him to a pulp and threw him out. And we gave him $300 and said, thank you very much. And all the other kids have been wonderfully behaved since then. Uh-oh, this went out on the internet. It's a joke. But, I mean, the thing is, we do learn sometimes to take seriously what's going on because another got punished.
Like to make an example.
Yeah. I mean, it's... Okay. Reprove a man of understanding, and he will gain knowledge. So the scoffer isn't going to learn anything. The simple might learn something. But the man of understanding, all you have to do is reprove him. Just correct him. He'll learn. You want to be wise. Not just because it doesn't hurt as much, but because you'll actually grow and learn. Condemnation is ready for scoffers, and beating for the back of fools. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the donkey, and a rod for the back of fools. Well, you see the I think that's the end, yeah. You see the theme there. Now, let's not talk about whether we're actually going to physically beat somebody or not. Sometimes coercion means we're going to actually physically beat you. But coercion also means that we were done talking. Okay? This is the way it's going to be. Now, you can get on board with it, you can agree with it, you can not agree with it, but this is the way it's going to be. Now, in our society, we have made an interesting kind of change in what we understand freedom to entail. For most of our nation's history, we didn't want the government interfering with the choices that we make, the lives that we choose to live, and so on like that. We wanted the government to stay out of that. But we didn't want everybody to stay out of it. We just wanted the government to stay out of it. In Proverbs, is there any sense, when you read these things, is there any sense that in Proverbs it is a value to be held up, that everybody gets to believe what they want? It isn't. We have rods for the back of fools here. So that in Proverbs, the understanding of the way the world works is, there are people we're going to listen to, and there are people we're not going to listen to. There are truths we're going to entertain, and there are truths we're not going to entertain. There are people we're going to elevate and honor, and there are people we are not going to elevate and honor, and that's that. That in Proverbs, there is this thing called wisdom, which is not carrying yourself with an air of authority, but it is actually understanding the truth as God has revealed it. And society has a perfect, not only right, but responsibility to honor or not honor according to whether people actually know the truth or not. So for our nation, for most of our history, we didn't want the government doing this necessarily, but we assumed that society did this. That churches would do this, that employers would do this, that schools would do this, that we would reward people for being wise, and we would punish people, or at least ignore them, not empower them, if they're not. And the idea that you have the freedom to believe what you want is a non sequitur. Society would say, and we have the freedom not to honor you. So yeah, if you want to believe, that's okay. But if you insist upon being in charge of the English department, that's not okay. We're not going to do that. We've changed our understanding of freedom so that now it's not just freedom from the government, it's freedom from any restraint, and that all of us are able to believe whatever we want. And that's not wise. Because that ends up with fools being empowered, and the lowest common denominator ends up ruling. Okay, it looks like we're time. If I quit now, I will have done well, at least on the time. How? Any comments or thoughts? Don't be a fool. That's our message for today. Don't be a fool. Be wise, don't be foolish. All right, let's pray. Lord Jesus, we thank you, Lord. We know we're not to be foolish, but we thank you that you yourself have not only delivered to us what wisdom is, but you yourself embody it. So, Lord, teach us in all of our thoughts, our words, and our deeds to try and to strive to be like you. For you are the very embodiment of wisdom. Amen.